Where is your iPod?
I was done listening to it.
Go get it.
You want me to go all the way back just to get it?
Yes, all the way back where you hide it. Then start listening to episode 320 of the Retro Rewind podcast.
Retro systems online. Reflux capacitor fluxing. Scanning movie space-time for The Karate Kid 2010. Rewinding in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, Rewinders and new listeners, to the Retro Rewind podcast, where we take a fresh look at movies and games from 15 or more years ago. I'm your captain of the pod, Francisco Ruiz, and I'm joined by your XO and mine, Paul, the butt-kicking, PaulJPowers.com Powers.
Dude, I'm from Detroit.
Oh.
Not really, but thanks for letting me be here. But I don't speak Chinese either.
All right. Also, for this discussion of the film The Karate Kid from 2010, the 2010 version, we welcome back aboard Administration Officer of the pod, Ashley Ruiz. Hey, Ashley.
Hey there. Thanks for having me back.
Glad to have you back. And in addition to Ashley, we're also very glad to have back aboard Feelings Officer of the pod, Patrick Patch Hicks. Hey, Patch.
Glad to be aboard. It's good to be back.
It is good to have you
Full
back.
steam ahead.
Yes,
Hey.
Exactly. Full speed ahead. But
Patrick
hey, let me
Hicks.
give those orders.
For this episode, it's more like Patrick Kicks.
Because I got my black belt handy.
Oh
Nice.
my. Well, now that you have a quick flyby of who we are, Paul, can you give us a quick overview of the production specs for The Karate Kid 2010 version? 2010! I know there's lots to pick from. The 2010 one with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith.
Okay, with Jackie Chan. Okay,
Yes.
sure. All right. Kung Fu Panda was released May 15th, 2008, and is rated PG. It runs an hour and 32 minutes, is directed by Mark Osborne, John Stevenson, written by Jonathan Eibel, Glenn Berger,
Paul.
and Ethan Reif, with lead
Paul.
stars being Jack Black,
Paul.
Peaches, Dustin Hoffman,
Paul.
Rain Man, and Jackie Chan.
Quiet.
What? Oh,
Skadoosh.
What?
First off, who is Jackie Chan in, not Panda Express, Kung Fu Panda?
Panda Express.
He's one of the
yeah.
masters. He's one
He's
of the masters.
Oh,
he's
okay.
the monkey guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That first thing, thank you. Second, we're not covering Kung Fu Panda at all. This is the Karate
What?
Kid, even though it
Aw.
should be called the Kung Fu Kid. I get that.
In China, there's a variation of that name.
Yeah,
it's
it's-
called Kung Fu Dream.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yes.
Oh, well, why didn't you say that before?
That could have been brought to my attention yesterday.
Fine, I'll go back and watch a less than movie than Kung Fu Panda. All right. The Kung Fu Kid, the Karate Kid, was released June 11th, 2010. Runs 2 hours and 20 minutes. Man, that's 50 more minutes than the Kung Fu Panda. And it's rated PG. Is directed by Harold Zwart, written by Christopher Murphy and Robert Mark Kamen, with lead stars being Jackie Chan, Jaden Smith, and Taraji P. Henson.
Taraji P. Henson.
Taraji, yeah. And the music was composed by the late, great James Horner.
All right.
Are you ready for the box office trivia?
I am ready. Ashley and Patch, are you both ready?
Aye.
Let's go.
All right.
All
And
right.
anyone in chat, you're welcome to join in as well, guessing where this ranks in 2010 box office, but go for it, Paul, with box office.
Thank you very much. Well, according to the box office, Kung Fu Panda is a better movie. But we're talking about The Karate Kid 2010. It was made for about $40 million, and it earned over $351 million at the box office.
Wow. Okay.
Cha-ching indeed. So given this fact, how high in the box office do you think it ranks among the movies released theatrically in 2010? We'll go for the top 2010 films of 2010.
Wow.
But actually, to help you out, it's in the top 50.
Okay. I was like, I don't think there can't be 2,000 films released in that year, but okay.
Not theatrically, no.
Well, all right. Okay, Ashley, what is your guess in the top 15?
Today's the 18th of March. Let's go with 18.
18?
I'm
All
feeling like it did okay, but
not like the best.
it doesn't.
It's no Kung Fu Panda.
It doesn't deserve to be heard in our-
It's no Panda Express. Pat.
So this was in the beginning stages of the MCU. People were like, let's get back to the movies.
Yeah, Iron Man 2 came out this year.
Oh,
And it was
so that may
released during the summer.
wasn't a great year, but let's go with, I'm going to go mid 25. Let's go 25.
All right. Don't see anyone guessing. Bobo, just as I say that, it guesses 32.
Not 42. Interesting.
Not 40, yeah. I'm going to swoop in with that, and I'm going to guess 42. So, did I... Dang it.
So
On
confident.
you, Bobo. No, I'm kidding.
Oh.
According to the-numbers.com, it actually came in at 15.
15,
Ooh,
really?
yeah.
Wow. All right, Ashley wins
Kadoosh
that
to
one.
you, Ashley.
Good job.
That's why you got to have at least a little confidence.
I guess.
just a smidge.
Just a smidge.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this, as of right now, this is the highest grossing movie within that has the title The Karate Kid currently? We could see that change.
Maybe. I have no idea.
But
I'm fairly certain this has grossed more money than the originals, but
Even with inflation?
I don't know about
Considering
that.
inflation?
I don't think they ever do that.
I don't know that they
Inflation.
adjust it, but if they did, I would hope that those movies would have made more.
Right?
I could be wrong.
I mean, this movie is so good. I hope it made the most money. But
Someone thinks that.
maybe. Well, thank you for those factoids, Paul. And let's see if any of them factor into our memory mind meld or subsequent roundtable discussion, which we'll get into once Alice has located our target film.
Alert. Target located. Spoilers incoming. Establishing analysis vector.
Welcome to Beijing. Gonna do something? I just want to go home. This is home.
I thought you were just a maintenance man.
I will teach you real kung fu.
Yes,
I don't want to be scared anymore.
Remember, always strong.
I'm ready.
That's nasty.
Rated PG.
Yes, it is rated PG, some may say. But what do we remember about the Karate Kid 2010 version? Maybe we just remember the rain. That's it. Or maybe some other memories really floated to the top of this film. So let's converge our memories together into our memory mind meld synopsis. After Earth, protagonist has to leave the wild, wild west because his mom gets a job in China where they have to heat water for 30 minutes before taking a shower. The best way to exercise on an elliptical in the park is with an adolescent playing violin in the background while Junior Pursuit of Happiness gets a dirty bucket of water poured on him and is bullied by young Chinese bad boys. What you gonna do? What are you gonna do when they come for you? So the Chinese Mr. Miyagi, Jackie Chan, who is the school's janitor, teaches him to be the next Karate Kid. Yes, karate, because it's in the title. And what else could it be? Kung Fu? Well, that would make more sense. Kung Fu is everything. Yeah, even when you are picking up your jacket. Don't make that face. Will Smith Jr. gets Bruce Lee outfit and wins karate tournament with honor. With honors. Sorry, that's a deep cut in a lot of ways.
That's a Will Smith reference to Men in Black.
And gains new students for Chinese Miyagi-chan. And the ultimate grand prize of singing with Justin Bieber during the end credits. Wow. I mean, certainly some of those things did happen, but a lot of it was decepted.
You can laugh, Ashley. It's okay.
And based on those memories, though, as flawed as they were, what rating did they lead you to predict for this film before you rewatched it? Classic, nostalgic, or tragic? I'm going to start with Patch this time.
So this was getting into a recent.
Sorry, one more thing. What was your prediction? And when did you first see this film? I assume 2010, since we're all fairly old, but like maybe not. Maybe you just saw it for the other day for the first time.
No, this was several years later after 2010.
Okay.
So it was a more recent retro rewind watch for me.
Indeed.
But at the time it was serviceable, I guess was the way to describe it.
It did its part.
It managed to make its money and earn, my trip to Blockbuster at the time, or wherever it was. And so I predicted nostalgic
for Patch. Ashley, what was your prediction and when did you first see this?
Okay. I first saw this film in the summer of 2010. I actually was intrigued by it because I am a fairly big Jackie Chan fan. I didn't care about Jaden Smith. And honestly, I never saw any of the original Karate Kid movies, but it was like, okay, Jackie Chan, this could be fun. So I saw it and I remember just feeling kind of meh about it. I could see why people would like it. So I think just based on how I felt leaving and just how it wasn't the most memorable thing, maybe for some folks it's nostalgic. I couldn't rate it higher, and I don't remember it being so bad that I would call it tragic.
Okay. So nostalgic then prediction. All right. How about you, Paul? Paul-san.
Yeah, I saw it in the theaters. I'm a Karate Kid fan. I was hesitant on this non-Machio, non-Miyagi movie when going into it, but I enjoyed it fairly well enough to
give it a
buy
chance.
the movie when it came out. But honestly, I hadn't seen it again until this rewatch. So this was my second time watching it.
Okay. All right.
So because I hadn't really had any desire to see it, but I still liked enough to buy it, I rated it nostalgic.
For me, I remember seeing this, I think, in the theater when it came out. It seemed like a cool team up of Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan.
Let me ask you this before you give this, because I thought, and I could be totally decepted here, but during the end credits, I thought it was the Justin Bieber music video, but playing during the end credits. But then when I watched it, it was like, it was the behind the scenes photos and a lot of Chinese stuff because it was in collaboration with China.
It was definitely the song. The song was playing.
The song was playing in the end credits, and maybe that's where I got mixed up.
So I do vividly remember it being the photos because I remember thinking there's this one photo of Will Smith holding Jan that I thought was a sweet photo, and so that just sort of.
So I was misremembering. Okay, so I'm glad a fellow theater watcher can verify that I was wrong.
For me, though, I remember liking it, but I had no desire to see it again. And so many other things have come out that I think poison the well for this movie. So I actually predicted tragic.
All right. Disobedient kids, here we come.
Well, their focus needs more focus. What do you want? But it'll be interesting to see if those predictions come true. But first, let's get into the things we liked most about the Karate Kid 2010 version. I'll spin that up for us.
Best bits.
Alrighty, so let's begin with our guests, as we like to. Ashley, what is one thing you liked about the Karate Kid 2010? And I'm just going to call it the Karate Kid from now on. Or maybe I'll say Kung Fu Kid. We'll see, but what's one thing you liked? Okay,
so I really liked the fight choreography. It was super fast paced. It was fluid. It was really just interesting to watch.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
of how the different styles of the fight choreography just transpired on screen, from seeing him trying to fight the kids in the park. And really, he's just taking what he knows from growing up in Detroit. And then he actually goes to the Kung Fu school, and you're seeing all of these people in fluid tandem motion together. And it's just so cool to seeing Jackie Chan take on like 5 to 7 boys and just all of this stuff going on to the final fight. I just feel like it was choreographed so incredibly well. It was just one of the best parts of the movie to watch because you were just engaged with what was going on.
Awesome. Patch, being a black belt yourself, what did you think of the fight choreography? Did you feel like it lived up to to real life? And if so, was it something you liked? Or
No,
did
it
you
didn't live up to real life because real life doesn't look like that. And I'm
How
glad
dare you?
because-
How dare you? It must have been exactly like that, I'm sure. No,
It's
but
not in Cinescope real life.
so what's something you did like about it, Patch?
Well, related to that, I like the training montages, and I like training montages anyway. I cut my teeth on Rocky and other movies from the 80s that, like the original Karate Kid, that have montages that show a progression of I'm bad, I'm better, I'm great, or those types of things. And this didn't change in this version or in this edition of the Karate Kid, because it kept, I guess, the spirit of what the original was doing, which is finding ways to create muscle memory from ordinary stuff. The idea of picking up your jacket, now put it down, pick it up, put it down. And for a while, I mean, I knew where it was going, but I was always curious, how would you get to point B?
Yeah.
Just like when you're watching the original 84 Karate Kid, how do you get from wax on, wax off to the defense side of things?
It
And
was the best, by the way.
Yes.
it was. Yeah. Still reigns supreme. But I think this did justice to kind of paying tribute to that in a way that made sense for these characters, especially when you set it up with that small bit where he doesn't pick up his jacket. He always throws it on the floor. And so you've got this into creating an avenue. I don't love the 1-to-1 ratio. Like some of it, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief because I'm like, well, you weren't really putting your jacket on when you did that move. It's not quite the same thing as wax on, wax off, but it worked for me. And I like how it progressed to get him to a place of, within the world of this movie, a believable, more experienced kung fu kid here. Yeah.
Right? Pick up your jacket.
So
speaking of montages, I thought when they're training on the Great Wall of China, and then they were kind of like on top of one of its pillars or whatever it's called,
towers.
It looked, it looked like it was like green screen when they did like this helicopter shot, one of it. But then I saw like behind the scenes, and it was legit. They were like there, so it was impressive. A lot of the background in those montage training areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that is. The montages aren't a good example of this, but in terms of like setting and some other aspects, I actually felt like this version of the Karate Kid shined the most when it departed from the original. Like I enjoyed aspects of like the kung fu and walking up this big that big mountain to get to the dragon water. I thought
that snake looked for 2010 special effects, that cobra looked pretty impressive.
I guess I could tell it was CG, but okay. It didn't look that impressive to me, I guess. Maybe back then I was fooled, but these days, no longer.
I was, of course, that, it takes me out of it. I'm wondering, is that real?
Exactly.
Or is that
Yeah. And there was one other aspect that I'm unfortunately missing now.
Is it a like that'll come later?
No, it's just another example of how it departed from the original and how I thought that made it better in a lot of ways when it would do that. But so that's just my first like, is that departure from it. Paul, what was your first like, or was it the montage also?
No, my first like, it was actually Jaden Smith. I didn't really remember his performance in this, but I was actually impressed that he could actually hold his own. I thought he was a very good actor, showing different ranges of emotion at different times. Unlike most kids his age, cannot carry a movie, and I thought he carried the movie pretty well. Now, was he a little too cocky at times? Yes. Did I like to see him getting slammed by a ping pong ball over and over a bit? Yeah, a little, yes. But then again, I thought overall, I thought he did great, and his physicality to do all those stunts and everything that he did, I was impressed.
And you know what? I'm just going to take it from there because my second like is Jaden Smith, though for a completely different reason. Because I felt that the whininess of Dre / Jaden was way more believable than Daniel / Ralph Macchio's whininess.
That's true.
I feel
true.
like this felt like a kid that was like just like why do you have to be so whiny and so like I don't want to talk back all that. Whereas I feel like it's a little out of place for Macchio, who's like 14, 15 and the Karate Kid. It's like, really, you're not past this type of attitude. So I felt like it was appropriate for Jan, who's supposed to be 12 in this movie. So
yeah.
Okay. Let's go back to Ashley. What's something else you liked?
Something else I liked was the location where it was set, just the on-screen visuals being shown, the city of Beijing and all of the surrounding areas where they were in the mountain going up to the Dragon Well, training on the Great Wall of China. Even when they went to the festival and they were just together in that little area and watching the what was that? The type of like puppet. It was
the play.
The play. It was just so, and from the school and from their home, I feel like it gave you a slice of life. And it was cool to be able to show like days in the lives of a different culture and seeing someone who came from circumstances like ours going to a completely different place. And you could really feel like, yeah, this is really different from where he started to where he is now. Yeah. But it was just visually beautiful, all the different locations, especially that Dragon Well and the mountain scene and the Great Wall. So incredibly pretty.
Yeah. Just as a quick aside, Patch, in your in the when you watched it, did Jaden and I think her name's Mei Ling, did they kiss?
Oh, I was going to bring that up. I liked the fact that it was edited out, but you could see like...
I don't like that, but I'm curious.
You don't like that they didn't kiss? I thought it was great that they didn't kiss.
Because in the theatrical version, they kissed, from what I remember, but maybe I'm deceptive.
No, because in the trailer and in the Justin Bieber music video, it shows them leaning in to kiss.
Okay. Patch,
I don't remember them kissing.
How dare you, Patch? You're supposed to help me out.
No, I'm not saying they did or didn't. I'm just saying I don't remember.
Neither do I.
I thought it was appropriate story-wise that they didn't, because if they did, I felt it was a little too forced.
I swear, I remember when I saw this the first time, they kissed and they blocked the light, and people were like looking back, like, "What's going on?" So
you know what, Francisco? I remember the Justin Bieber music video again, so. I'm there with you, man. It could happen.
That's fair.
Release the U.S. theatrical cut.
Patch?
Is that the Snyder cut? Is that the Snyder cut of Karate Kid 2010?
Clearly.
It's in black and white and 5 hours long.
Oh, my word. Patch, what's something else you liked?
Yeah, I was going to co-sign what Ashley said about the location. And I think what makes it, to your point earlier, Francisco, a good deviation from its inspirational original is the fact that there is a fish out of water that's more pronounced in this one.
Yeah.
Definitely,
yes. Daniel leaves Reseda to go, or leaves New Jersey to go to Reseda. But yet he's still around Americans. He has this relationship with, he's not pulled out completely. He's just being beat up by bullies. And that's,
have you ever seen the people in Encino? They're like on a whole nother level.
It could be no worse than people live in Oregon, It's
hey, these country club kids are no joke.
You West Coasters living in the past. No, I think that seeing him leave and really be completely immersed into a culture where he doesn't know the language, he's trying to figure stuff out. It really does create that sense of discomfort and having to get fully immersed. In fact, I will say this. The version I watched was on the Roku channel or Tubi or one of those kind of free for you.
Yeah.
But there were sequences, and I thought I was watching like this thing actually play out. There were sequences, particularly when he and Jackie Chan were in the Kung Fu studio, and there was dialogue going on in the foreign language, and there was no subtitles. So in this particular version, I was like, wait a minute. I don't think we're not supposed to know what they're saying. And sure enough, I pulled up that same scene on YouTube and the subtitles were there.
Oh,
so I felt a little bit out of place. And I kind of thought it was cool because it was like I was him in that scene going, what are they saying? What are they talking about? And so it kind of amplified. And that coupled with the settings themselves, which are absolutely gorgeous. The cinematography in this movie was surprisingly phenomenal. Yeah. Especially some of the aerial shots during one of the training montages when he's doing the splits. It's all it feels very mature. It feels a lot more less hokey than I guess what we see in the original Karate Kid as an example. But I thought that was really leaning into the present day at the time of 2010. How do we depict this without feeling like we're going into Big Trouble in Little China type mythology, where it feels culturally appropriate, but it also feels a little bit surprisingly antiquated in an old school kind of way, where we're getting the old style mixed with, okay, how do we bring this to the modern day? So it was a good balance for me. Balance being the operative word there.
Sorry, it's more about being strong, not finding balance in this. But
it's all about balance. Who's the black belt here? Okay.
I agree with you, but this movie was not making that point. Paul, give us one more like before we get to our classic makers, please.
Just because those who are diligent, if they know where to look, you can find our review on Cobra Kai. But it was cool to see that they had like a one of the fighters in the tournament is like a pre-Hawk with the mohawk in there.
I'll be talking about that a little bit later.
All right, I should have saved that for that. All right, let me go to my second like. Francisco, you said that the believability. I thought the main little kid villain Cheng, he is too good.
Like, as a villain,
yes. I don't think there was a lot of acting in there. Like they hired him for what he's definitely what they call a method actor, I think. Just his believability was just, I believed it the whole way. And it was actually really cool to see photos of him and Jaden at the end together, and some behind the scenes stuff that I watched where they're like playing around and laughing together, which is nice to see. But man, even as an adult, I was kind of scared of him. Like, this is crazy. He has that look in his eye.
You feel threatening.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's get to our classic makers then, guys, for the Karate Kid. For me, it's interesting. This sort of is a weird amalgam of both what Ashley and Pat, you said about the choreography. I loved how Jackie Chan definitely felt so much more like a martial artist than Pat Morita, Miyagi, or Ralph Macchio. But I felt like the fights in the original Karate Kid. I'm sorry, I'm going to compare. I can't help it.
It's the same movie. It's the same name.
Exactly. Yeah. The fights in the original felt more grounded and real, whereas these ones felt very choreographed and flashy.
I would agree with you partially, and when I get to my classic maker, I'll say where I disagree. But when it comes to the tournament and stuff, there's a lot of unnecessary flips that look cool, but I just doubt you would do that Cobra Kai has the same problem. You wouldn't do that in a tournament because as you're in the air, you're going to get knocked down by your opponent.
You got to be super quick and be aware. I don't know. I don't know about that. But Patch is the black belt.
If someone's flipping in front of you, you're just going to just throw your foot in there and kick him to the ground?
Yeah, more than likely, or just walk away. Like, guys, this doesn't work for me. For point fighting, if you're kicking me in the face, I'm backing up because that's 2 points. I don't need that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, so that was my classic maker. Let's go. Paul, it sounds like yours is in that same vein, so let's just go back to you.
Where I disagree is when we get introduced to Jackie Chan's fighting, and this is what I think is the best scene is when he's diverting the boys that are attacking little Jaden Smith. By far, that is like the best scene. Just the fighting, it's like, wow, this is a scene that mirrors the original Karate Kid, where Mr. Miyagi is fighting the Cobra Kais as they're dressed in skeletons and such, defending the protege to be. But my goodness, Jackie Chan is a much better fighter than, than Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
So that was really cool to see a level up in that regards. I thought it was more, the fight sequence there was more believable. Like if you watch the original Karate Kid, it's a couple kicks from an old man and these big teenagers are down on the ground. It's not really going to happen. But the way Jackie Chan fights or fights or whatever that is called, where he moves anyway, that whole scene, the best classic maker right there. Jackie Chan, excellent job.
Nice. Let's go with Patch next for your classic maker.
Yeah, I think Jackie Chan's great, and he was tied in terms of classic maker, but this is more of a heart pick for me. I want to give.
Were you the feelings officer?
Yeah, I am.
That's right.
James Horner as the guy who scored it. So when I was in college and I really started getting into movie soundtracks and scores, James Horner was who I listened to. This is before Hans Zimmer really kind of took over. And I think to this day, had Horner not passed away, he probably still would have been my number one.
Oh, wow.
But, between things like Field of Dreams, Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, Braveheart, these are the movies that I was like, this gets at emotional musical storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think when you hear him, it's not specifically there's a theme in the movie, but he has a particular style that lives in all those movies. And this was no different. He did The Amazing Spider-Man, which is my favorite Spider-Man in the cinematic universe.
It's okay that you're wrong. That's fine.
Okay, we can. I need to go, guys.
We're not going to stand around for kicks to the face or any
into my heart because I'm a black belt, right? No, but being able to hear him in this and hear his score echoed just throughout the whole movie is just absolutely phenomenal. I really think. He was obviously gone too early at like 41, I think is how old he was. And
wow.
Again, I'm not trying to make this a sentimental thing, but I really do feel like
just
obviously
us, we need to step it up, Patch.
Yeah, exactly. Get your feelings out, guys. Feeling film might be defunct, but the feelings are still there. And but yeah, for me, just getting a chance to hear his one of his scores again throughout a movie was really great. So James Horner, he takes the movie for me as the emotional pick.
Awesome.
And classic.
Yeah. Nice. And Ashley, why don't you finish us out with your classic maker for the Karate Kid?
Of course. Well, I definitely did like the music, but it wasn't the thing that took the cake for me. We had talked about this a little earlier when Patch was talking about the things that he liked and the scenery and really setting up a fish out of water story. Mm-hmm. So that was my classic maker. The fact that it told such a poignant fish out of water story. Mm-hmm. It felt significantly more believable than the original Karate Kid because you have a cultural shock. You have someone moving from a very person focused, like an inwardly focused society to one where there's honor and it's all about being like a cog in the machine instead of being very individualistically focused. Mm-hmm. So different culture, different language. Mm-hmm. He has a different type of struggle than Daniel does because not only is he moving from one country to another, doesn't understand the language, doesn't understand how the culture works. He's also younger than Daniel was too. So he has less emotional maturity. And there's these things that are happening to him. They're very grown up problems, being bullied and being threatened and really just kind of not knowing what to expect and being put in these precarious situations. Yeah. It just tells a very poignant story. It's incredibly believable. It was very moving. And I feel like the movie did a great job showing someone just being the odd one out and having to adjust. I mean, the scenes where he's just trying to watch TV and SpongeBob SquarePants is on, but it's in Mandarin and even the subtitles are in Mandarin. He can't read it. He can't understand it. So he has to do his best guess. I imagine when he's at school, it's probably very similar. When he's going on the bus, walking to school, all this communication is in a language he doesn't speak. And it's got to be so hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the most believable thing about it is the 12-year-old who wouldn't pick up his jacket.
That was incredibly believable because we have a 12-year-old and sometimes the jacket ends up on the floor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does.
Yeah, we do too, and sometimes the 12-year-old ends up on the floor if it's.
Wow.
Kidding. Sweep the leg.
Oh my word.
And then sweep the floor.
Well,
Body bag! Yeah!
wow. So there's lots, it sounds to like about the Karate Kid 2010 version. And I want to share something else I like, and that happens to be Junkyard Juggernauts. The king and queen have disappeared. A warlord is enslaving the land, and their only hope is you and the junkyard. Junkyard Juggernauts is a pixel art infused tabletop board game for 1 to 4 players designed by Francisco Ruiz. Hey, that's me. You will play as a Mageneer, drafting cards to build the arms and legs of a magic-fueled mech, aka a Juggernaut, before taking on the Warlord. With an expected crowdfunding campaign at in June 2025, there's still work to be done, but if you want to be in on the know and get updates, go to junkyardjuggernauts.com and sign up for our email list.
Hey, Francisco, that's great and all. I'm glad you're doing this, but June of 2025, man, I hope I can get the artwork done before.
Paul is
assisting a little bit with the artwork,
with some beautiful illustrative artwork to harken back to Legend of Zelda, having of course on the NES it's just all very, very pixel blocks, 8-bit pixel blocks, but then in the instruction manual you have these beautiful art pieces that look like old 80s anime. So Paul is illustrating vignettes like that for the instruction manual, and also some for the character art boards. So that's been awesome. But that's why he said June. Oh no.
Hey.
Yes. Yeah. How about some trivia?
Okay, let's karate
I just realized, not that this is scripted or anything, but the way I transitioned there didn't give you the lead in for us to talk about trivia. But
Francisco, quit being so trivial.
All right. Well, then how about some trivia about the Karate Kid?
2010?
Yeah. Yes, 2010 version.
Okay, the Kung Fu Kid, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So did you all realize that Danny Trejo was considered for the role of handyman Mr. Han before Jackie Chan was cast?
What, with a knife and machete and stuff?
I mean, it sounds like they were originally thinking Mexico for this reboot or something. I don't know. But
that would be interesting. Instead of learning karate, you learn knife play.
But with that in mind, if you were in a combat sports movie, what actor would you want to be your movie coach / sensei? So let's start with Paul.
Combat sports movie.
Yeah, so like Karate Kid, Rocky, Bloodsport.
Those are the only two that I can think of. And between a crotchety old Burgess Meredith and a Mr. Miyagi, I would lean towards Mr. Unless you count like the Wizard as an e-sport. Then you have, your brother and his girlfriend yelling at you while you're trying to play video games. I think I'm going to lean towards Mr. Me. Although, you know what? What's her name? The redhead girl basically knew where all the secrets were magically. So I'm going to pick her as the omniscient video games.
Is this
she can tell me all the secrets.
Oh, from the Wizard?
From the Wizard?
Oh.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's quite the pull. Ashley, how about you?
I don't know. This is a toughie, but honestly, if I'm going to be any kind of combat sport, I want to learn boxing, and I want to be taught by Chuck Norris because Chuck Norris is pretty bomb.
That's
what
good.
Movie is that?
Doesn't even matter.
It doesn't have to be a movie.
It doesn't have to be a movie. It just has.
Whoa!
I have no, and I don't watch a lot of these movies. I've seen
combat sports movie.
I'm gonna make up my own.
Yeah, it could be. She's in a boxing movie. That's a combat
you just
sport.
say that because you're married.
It's in the rules.
It's in the rules. He didn't say which movie would you pick and who would you replace. I'm like, no. Any kind of combat sport, Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris is the answer. Or Jackie Chan if Chuck Norris is not available. But Chuck Norris.
All right. I see how you're wording it. Okay.
What is it? I mean, right. I was about to say I sent this to you ahead of time, but no, this is the first time you guys are hearing this question, I'm sure.
Chuck Norris. Because he's got all those classy jokes.
Well, you know what? I'm still gonna stick with Hallie from Jenny Lewis is omniscient. You can't beat that. Go ahead.
Patch, do you have someone better than not doing a push-up but pushing the earth down?
Yeah.
You can't really go wrong with Chuck Norris. I didn't pick him, but
true.
I think that for me, if I'm in a combat sports movie, it's going to be a comedy combat sports movie.
Okay.
And I'm going to channel the Steve Carell, Michael Scarn from The Office to be like my guy to get me ready for whatever the battle is. This overly arrogant, suave, he's got skills and he's a little bit too cocky, but he does just enough to be dangerous. And I think that
Olympic figure skating.
Whatever, you can pick it. Yeah,
it's not a combat sport.
Can be.
Sure, it is.
It can be.
It can be.
Those blades off, man. You take those blades off.
Nancy Kerrigan in there.
Oh my God.
Harding.
Yeah, if Tanya taught us anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Tanya Harding could be my coach. I don't know.
Wow.
But I like Steve Carell from Michael Scott kind of.
Okay. All right. Bobo says Bruce Lee would be his coach. Nice.
Oh, it's good. Love
that. Yeah, that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The great trivia, Francisco.
Thank you, Paul.
And now that we've all had some trivial fun, let's find out what memories you, our rad rewinders, had about the Kung Fu Kid.
Indeed. All right. Dustin Warford says, I remember now that I need to change my Patreon vote because I thought I was voting on the original and not this one. I should learn to read everything before casting my vote. That's great. Thanks, Dustin.
Kevin Joshua Burnham says, hearing Jaden Smith whine for 85% of the film is proof that Will Smith slaps the wrong people around. Wow. I should have read that to myself before I read that out loud.
And Jeremy Shields says, Jackie Chan's worst movie. Wow.
Really?
Ooh.
So
you may have not seen a lot of Jackie Chan films because there are, at least in my opinion, far worse out there.
I've never seen 80 Days Around the World or whatever.
Around the World in 80 Days. It's not that great of a movie.
That's what I've heard.
And he's one of the better parts in that movie, and it's not very good. I saw that in theaters too.
Have you seen Panda Express? It's not that great.
Kung Fu Panda? I've seen at least the first 3 of those.
No, I was going for Panda Express to be silly. But thank you guys for sharing your memories of the Karate Kid 2010. And it sounds like all of you sort of are leading us into our next section very well. So Alice, boot that up for us.
Worst woos.
Alrighty, so yes, what things do we not like about this film? And
I was about to say, hey, is it July 8th? Because we're about to beat on this thing.
July 8th, beat on this.
That's the date that the car wreck happened and he was beating on the car.
Okay, thank you. I'm
sorry.
Wow,
most people haven't seen this movie recently to know what I'm talking about anyway. So.
I thought that was the date that Doc Brown had been in time travel. Wait, that's
everybody remember the 5th of November.
Yeah, I thought it was November 5th, 1955.
November 5th.
Okay. The timeline is skewing right now. Anyway, I want to bring, because Paul brought this up before, I'm going to start with my first dislike. This is close to being my tragic maker, but I thought better of it, and that is Mohawk Kid Wu Ping should have won the whole tournament. He was too cool. He was so awesome. He should have totally beaten Jaden, being the bad guy Chang, I forget his name. Yes, exactly. He was just like with his hair. Oh, so cool. I just liked him so much. And I want him to win. I don't care about who we've been watching the whole movie. Watching
the best
the whole
hair.
movie.
He wins.
He wins.
Talk about being unemotionally invested in the main character.
Yeah, right.
Francisco likes the second and tertiary characters more.
He didn't even get on the cast list because he doesn't talk, I don't think.
Yeah,
but
he was just a glorified.
He was the one I was rooting for this whole movie. Even though I just saw him in the last 20 minutes. Okay, so that is my first dislike. Let's go to Ashley. What's one thing you didn't like?
Too many, but let me try to cull this and choose. Something that I disliked was just how young the main cast was.
Oh.
And even though Jaden Smith did a great job being believable as a 12-year-old, as a fish out of water, I really did not like that the main cast, they were 12-year-old kids because it put them in such hard situations to watch young people go through between the fights and him being bullied. And it was just really hard to watch such a young kid go through that, especially like I work in an elementary school and I see kids on a daily basis and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just little babies and they're going through all this hard stuff. And even though when Mr. Han was redirecting in that fight, the fact that he was taking on children, that these children were coming at him, it just, a lot of things that happened in the movie, it just felt really off-putting, just given how young, like 90+% of the cast was. It just felt, a lot of things just felt inappropriate, just given how young they were.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it felt, I didn't never like stop to think about it, but it is strange that these kids would just start attacking such a grown-up. And first off, I guess they thought, they're just, it felt very Lord of the Flies in a way, but, but Patch, what were you going to say?
I was just going to tack on and say that I think the strength that we mentioned earlier about the fact that the age of Dre and these guys gave us sympathy for him, as opposed to, I think what you mentioned earlier, Francisco, about Daniel's, the way that he reacted. The whininess of Dre makes sense in a movie like this, whereas the whininess of Daniel doesn't. Yeah. It works to a disadvantage when the bullies are the same age as him.
Yes.
Yeah. If you had taken
more
that same
mature.
Well, yes. And if you had taken 15-year-olds doing what these 12-year-olds were doing as bullies, that would have probably created a lot more believability, and it would have given him Dre a lot more agency to learn Kung Fu and then to eventually overcome during the tournament. Wow, you're not only overcoming through technique, but also you're a young kid. You're not, age doesn't matter when it comes to knowing Kung Fu. That would have been a great through line to kind of parallel with his journey. And I think that that's the benefit is also the curse at this point, because of the fact that, I know I coach 12-year-old soccer players and they can get mouthy, but when I tell them stop talking, they stop talking. They don't come at me with, kicks and punches and things like that where I have to jack their chin.
Well, because you're wearing your black belt to soccer now, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Every week this comes out, and then they're like, "What is that belt, sir?" No, but but I agree with that. I think it definitely is a little off-putting to see 12-year-olds acting like 15-year-olds cinematically. When,
absolutely.
It's not as believable.
What was that also your dislike too, Patch, or was there something else?
No, one of my first dislikes was the fact that the tournament didn't have blue mats with gold fists.
I made that same comment.
You did,
I did make that same comment when we were watching. I'm like, dang, I miss those blue mats with the gold fist. These are boring.
Also, that's a dislike from Cobra Kai season 6 for me. Just
oh my gosh, they had fungus. What do you want?
One of my legit dislikes was the fact that Dre's relationship with the girl just was unimportant. It's a subplot that didn't really go anywhere. And I think going back to the fact that it was shoehorned in. It's one of those elements that I think was pulled from the original inspiration that just didn't have a lot of momentum. She wasn't dating the bully. There wasn't any history with that. He found her and he screws up her dance thing by being her friend, and it just felt a little weird. And I think the whole bit with she needs to overcome her own stuff with her parents, it's trying to parallel with what he's trying to overcome. It wasn't as synchronous as I think they wanted it to be. And I think if you had eliminated her and that whole subplot, you wouldn't have lost much from the overall flow of the movie.
Agreed. Yeah.
It kept my interest.
All right.
That sounds bad as a 40-plus-year-old man.
I was gonna say Patch is like right on the money because that was my second dislike.
All right. Well, go ahead and talk to that, Ashley, and then we'll go to Paul, who hasn't gotten any dislikes in yet.
Oh, trust me, I'm saving them. Okay. They're coming.
Me too, Paul.
Gold standard. No, for me, it just felt off because, like, yeah, they're 12-year-olds, but he's looking at her like he's older than 12, but nothing happens.
Yeah.
Except
I had those looks and feelings way before then. But
I don't think most 12-year-olds are going to be that confident to do anything.
No one is
going to
be that cocky and over the top and be like, I don't speak your language, but I'm going to assume that you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth, basically. And how he just approaches her with, like, he's got all this swagger, and it just feels like, okay, do 12-year-olds in 2010 have that much swagger?
Everybody
in a nation where
different. There's a range.
I suppose
it just feels so off, and it feels so forced, and it's like they're trying to make it romantic, but you're 12, so it's just like, I guess your friends who look like lovingly at each other, like, I like you, I want to hold your hand, but it doesn't add anything substantial. And the fact that her father, like, interjects himself and he's like, you like dishonor my family, like, get away from my daughter, blah, blah, blah. And like how she gets picked up and how she was practicing and he got her to go away from practice and just, they went off to the middle of nowhere, essentially. Like, that just felt like not cool.
Yeah.
Because her dad has to figure out where she is because everything got moved and he's basically assuming what could possibly go wrong. Take some time away. Don't practice. Just go off. And I feel like, he wasn't the greatest influence on her. I felt like she was a much better influence on him, but it didn't
that's
really.
That's why it made more sense when he apologized later.
Yeah, no, that was sweet, but honestly, I didn't like what they were trying to suggest between those two characters because you couldn't suggest more because they're 12. You hear that,
Francisco? Suggest. They didn't actually kiss. It was suggested.
But no, it didn't add any.
I swear I saw it.
It didn't add anything for me, and it just goes back to these age of these characters. It's trying to make you think, oh, they're going to be a couple someday, but because they're 12, we can't make them kiss on screen. We can't really force more than this.
There are 12-year-olds who do a lot more.
Oh, I'm sure. But honestly, if this movie is rated PG and you're trying to say, well, he's 12 and he's in this new land, he's the next Karate Kid, you can't have it beat for beat when they're 12. I'm sorry. It's not going to carry over the same way.
So thank you, Ashley. And I think my dislikes certainly swim in that same range, but I want to give Paul a chance.
No, I swim in a different ocean.
Okay, well,
and that's okay.
So give us some of the fish that are in that ocean.
Some
Paul.
Things. All my dislikes are unbelievability that take me out of the movie. Just for fun, we'll go with the bonus. These filmmakers don't know how DDR works. What the heck?
Yeah, right. I even told Ashley, I was like, he's not stepping on any of the steps. What's going on?
He's making up his own moves, and it's somehow
you did awesome.
How
Great
does it
job.
know he's doing awesome?
Yeah, no. Whenever it's a pet peeve of mine when they show video games and it doesn't work in real life or it's the wrong sounds. Anyway, checking into school, they say only school uniforms are accepted here, but nobody's in school uniforms either. Why are they picking on him? It's only later that they're like days later they're having like field trips and they're all in orange, but he's not. So I don't know what this whole thing of like, oh, you need to be in uniform, and he isn't, but neither is anybody else. They do it multiple times, but those are just for fun. But what really, you can count both of those as one, just because I can.
So is that your first one dislike?
That's my first one.
Okay.
My second dislike is the music. Mr. Horner, may you rest in peace.
You're right. It's not Basil Polidorus. I agree with you, Paul.
I'm not dissing your music or the music of Mr. Horner there. But honestly, the music overall is all over the place. The movie starts out with the rap song, and then it does this weird transition into orchestral. And then after that, it goes into a late 90s alternative style. And I was not surprised when all of a sudden this popped up.
SpongeBob SquarePants! SpongeBob SquarePants!
They should have just picked orchestral or just a certain style of songs and go with it and make a great soundtrack from any of those. Like, pick one.
Yeah, it
Pick a
was
lane.
really
So
disjointed.
that's a soundtrack. Yeah, that's a soundtrack issue, not a score issue.
Well, it affects the movie and the watching of it, and I'm like,
I don't-
what's going on here? This is ridiculous.
I don't disagree, but that's something else. Is you have to have great needle drops if you're going to use a soundtrack, not a score, to have the ability to needle drop a great song at a particular point. Like You're the Best Around is a great example of a needle drop during the whole tournament sequence in the 84.
Right.
It
So,
works.
Patch, let me ask you this. You've reviewed a lot of movies. Do you know who is typically in charge of the, like, when it comes to mixing popular vocal songs with orchestral soundtracks? Is that usually, would James Horner be in charge of that? Would the director?
No,
I've heard mixed things. So
from what I know very little of, it's a director's decision in conjunction with the composer for particular scenes, and so he will choose to use score music for certain scenes or soundtrack. Edgar Wright's a great example as a director, where he will actually, for like Baby Driver, he picked songs and then chose the scenes to amplify those songs, which is not necessarily a common theme. John Carney, who does the best movie in the world, Sing Street, is going to be
shot across the bow. I see.
Yeah, I got it. No, he will craft a story and then fill in appropriate songs to thematically enhance the story.
Right.
And that's with all of his movies. For movies like this, I agree. I think there's a dissonance that comes from a balance of score and soundtrack. I don't think the soundtrack's good. Like, I don't think that the songs make sense only at that, okay, here's a young black kid, let's throw some hip hop in here. Or here's a dramatic scene, let's throw some score in there. It's not balanced very well. I think that's a director issue for not being able to say this scene would be appropriate to create consistency across. And I think it connects with the editor as well. I think he works with the director to say what songs are going to be appropriate.
And I'm sure the studio has some say sometimes.
Well, yeah. And can you buy the rights to a particular song? Now, for a big budget studio, you probably could, but that can be a factor as well, where you have to kind of, like, I'm watching The Wonder Years, and in syndication, the original Joe Cocker intro is gone because they couldn't get the rights to it.
So iconic.
You watch episodes of 90210. You can't watch certain episodes of Beverly Hills 90210 because in syndication, they didn't get the rights to use the bands that appeared at the Peach Pit. So you have full episodes that are missing from Paramount Plus because and so that's a factor that goes into it, where those are part of a scene, part of a movie, part of a show. But I don't disagree, Paul. I think that there's definitely inconsistencies when it comes to the whole of the movie in terms of soundtrack and score. There are definitely movies out there that do a fantastic job of that, but this is not one of them.
Very fair.
So Francisco, you're waiting for this.
I thought we moved past it.
Never.
Gosh.
That should have been part of the soundtrack.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It would make just as much sense.
It would fit. Yeah, it would absolutely fit.
Speaking of things I don't like.
During the training montage.
So much like Paul wrapped a bunch of things together, I'm going to do the same. And so the theme of this dislike is Dre.
Oh my, here we go.
Dr. Dre.
Played by Jan Smith. First off, he seems to learn parkour. He's like jumping on buildings and stuff. The boys know more
and
parkour.
Breaking Jackie Chan's pottery.
Apparently, exactly. So don't know where that's coming from. Like you were saying, Ashley, I hate how he's a bad influence on the violin girl, and not only really when he's like, oh, just skip practice, you'll be fine, just come and let's just go who knows where, and then come to find out their auditions in 20 minutes, just gets there in the nick of time. It's like, oh my gosh, this wouldn't have been an issue if you had just done what you're told. And then finally, don't. And we were speaking to earlier, the whole fish out of water thing, and like him, this weird romance he has with the girl that doesn't seem to make sense. And I think what sort of just exemplifies that is toward the end when we have this scene of like he gets his I forget if his leg gets hurt or it's which part of him gets hurt that Jackie Chan has to do the fire on, the magic fire on. He says like one of the reasons he's saying is like I don't want to be afraid anymore, or I don't want to be scared anymore. But there's been not really anything in this movie leading toward that. There's no like him being scared really. I'm not seeing a lot of him being. He is scared of the bullies at the beginning, but then I wish that was more shown. Like maybe he's scared of this girl. Like he really wants to ask her out, but he's scared of her. No, he's like super confident, man. Mm-hmm. And then once he starts training with, I feel like he should have been scared of something Jackie Chan was doing to train him, but no, he's just like, this is boring. Why do I have to keep doing this? Mm-hmm. Having fear be something that was driving him or that he could overcome. It's like he's just tacked on that at the end. Oh, we need some moral to make this movie worth it. Whereas
what I'm hearing is stakes. You need to kill the dog and introduce fear. Always have fear be your motivation.
Well, not always, because that wasn't quite what it was in the original Karate Kid, where it was more about him finding balance because he was being bullied and he was always going to feel like they got the best of him. And that was constant throughout the movie. And so I felt like that moment was earned in the original Karate Kid. In this, I feel like it was just tacked on. So that was all having to do with Dre, all things I didn't like about this film, my dislike.
And that's totally rational in that fact. But because in the original, even though like they're not getting bullied after it's like, we're going to take you to the All Valley, they were still around. You continued to see them, and he continued to be like watching his back. Once the deal was struck between Mr. Han and whatever that master's, what that character. Master Lee, whatever the name was. Those bullies, they never really even made eye contact. They just kind of faded into the background. They really weren't as prevalent. So what is this fear? This fear, is it a fear of failure? Like, where is this fear? Exactly. Because he was overly confident and he felt like he wasn't being trained right. And if he knew he didn't have anything to lose until the competition, it's not really represented right.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for just, for confirming and affirming my correct dislike. Patch, let's give us one more dislike before we get to our tragic makers.
I'd have to say that the leg injury and the scene that follows feels a little bit forced to me. This is one of those moments that I'm not going to, bury the lead. I mean, it leads into my classic maker, but
your classic maker,
tragic maker?
We did that already.
Sorry, tragic maker. My bad.
Well, then go ahead. Just
don't worry. The ending is my tragic maker too. Go ahead.
But watching it play out, the dialogue really felt forced. It felt unemotional, and I didn't really have any kind of emotional stake in that moment. It was as if both Chan and Dre were just like saying their lines.
Yes.
Now I kind of like the healing methodology. I think that's a nice little update.
That was cool. Yeah.
But everything felt very wooden in that scene. And I was a little disappointed because when you think about a movie that's taking a lot of its beats from an original, then you kind of have to make those comparisons, and you're kind of let down a little bit at that moment, because that was a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Something that hadn't really happened in a movie. It's obviously been sort of poked fun at by Cobra Kai and other things. But at the time, it felt really dramatic. And so to kind of recreate that scene didn't feel like it felt a little bit cheaper for me. So that was kind of a meh.
Yeah,
that's absolutely too bad. I thought the acting was fine there, and I didn't think it was as good as the Miyagi magic hand rub and whatever he does. but yeah.
I mean, that's a great drop for the Bill Conti score with the original Karate Kid. And so, yeah, and you really get that punctuation in this, that from what I recall.
Yeah.
But so was that go into your tragic maker then?
So my tragic maker, and I don't know if this is everybody else's because it feels a little obvious, but I'm going to just call it the title. We've joked about the Kung Fu Kid versus the Karate Kid.
I can see that. Yeah.
So
it should have been the Mohawk Kid wins. That should have been the title.
That's Francisco's fabulous fan fiction.
It should have been, what are the rules to this tournament again? I don't know. I didn't really get that either. That was an honorable mention. Dislike was, what are the rules to these tournament fights? I don't really know. Yeah. Because we get that in the original. Throughout this conversation, all of us have said at least once, when I think about the original.
Yeah.
I have no problem with being derivative in terms of plot. There have been movies like Top Gun and Days of Thunder, Dances with Wolves and Avatar, and the one that I like to compare in terms of this kind of conversation, Point Break and Days of Thunder, or Point Break and Fast and the Furious.
Oh,
you can look at that pairing right there. You can absolutely say, oh yeah, that's totally Point Break in sports cars, in street racing. And the thing is they're unapologetic because the beats are the same, but there's enough of a difference in terms of characters. Obviously, with those and the other two movies, they're different sports, different settings. So I can see how you can argue, well, it's still martial arts, but the guys that did this updated version, they did change it. It wasn't karate; it was kung fu. So I'm fine if you keep the main plot. A lot of the stuff that worked is kept, but when you call it the Karate Kid, you naturally say, well, that wasn't like the original.
Exactly.
Well, that wasn't as good as this. And it really makes the 2010 version, it puts it at a disadvantage because it has nothing to stand on apart from its original.
Yeah.
So it's never going to be as good as the original. And what happens is that comparison then becomes like, well, they didn't do it as well, as opposed to being like, call it something else. Putting it in a different country was a great move. Giving it kung fu instead of karate was great. But then you bring in the subplot with the girl, you bring in Chan's emotional breakdown about his wife that is compared to Miyagi, felt a little bit out of left field. There was enough familiarity there for me that made me go, yeah, that didn't work because Miyagi did it better or Daniel did it better. And I don't think that's fair to this movie.
No.
With its faults. But the title really does kind of summarize, don't try to be this. Do something else. Use the same story beats if you want. You're allowed to do that. Other movies have done it and they've done just fine. The Fast and the Furious, for better or for worse, is a continuously popular franchise globally because they used a template and they evolved from that. I wouldn't have expected the Karate Kid 2010 to have a sequel. Why? Because the next thing I would expect is for them to go to another foreign country where Jackie Chan's origin story would live. And then, Jaden would be trying to avoid getting hit by, sharp objects and falling off of platforms. So it's just, it really does a disservice to the movie by calling it the same thing because you have no choice subconsciously than to compare it to its original.
Yeah.
But Patch, you actually care about movies, and
I do.
Movie studio, the heads of movie studios and marketers are all about the money, so they know that people will actually go and see this movie just by copying the name alone. In fact, what Ashley was saying earlier is that this movie made more money in the box office, about the same, if not a little bit more, than all the other Karate Kid movies combined. So
probably adjusting for inflation.
And they won't do that.
Here's what I'll say though, Paul, and I agree with you. I think that's, but unfortunately with movie studios, and I think this started a lot in 2010 and proceeding to today, it's all about the short-term gains, rather than the long-term legacy. Because I think we could have gone with a different name, like Patch was suggesting, and you have the star power of Jackie Chan. That's a lot of weight right there with the producer of Will Smith. I think you got a great shot without calling it the Karate Kid to not only build something new and something you could build off of, without having all these constant comparisons to something else.
You would still compare it because it would be obvious.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But it would. But when you call it something different, if I called Point Break, and The Fast and the Furious, again, I fully agree and recognize that they're different movies because they take place different settings, different circumstances. But don't
call it the Kung Fu Kid because that's too similar. So what do you say, Kung Fu Dreams, or what is it called in China?
It's Kung Fu Dream in China.
So then,
I think that's actually a great title. Because, and it's also a great title because while I'm sure the Karate Kid is familiar to folks in China, it's not the starting point.
Right.
Whereas Kung Fu Dreams would be a great starting point.
Right.
And I would imagine that some kid who watches that and loves it in China gets a hold of this 1984 and is like, what is this crap? You know?
Yeah.
Because it's now going to compare that to Kung Fu Dreams, even though chronologically one came before the other. So I think that you have to deviate enough from your original source material to be derivative in order to cash in. But I don't disagree, Paul, that this was really attaching a name that's familiar is going to bring in.
Yeah, that's all marketing right there. Yeah.
So make your money, but in the long term, like you, Francisco, you lose a lot of credibility with your audience who don't want to go see the live action version of something that is beloved as a cartoon.
Exactly.
You know what? I will say this. I was going to save it for later, but that's a great. I was not really looking forward to seeing this new Karate Kid Legends because it steals the name again, Karate Kid, and I wasn't really that thrilled with how this movie came out, you know, all these years later before I watched this rewatch, my second one. But actually after watching this and knowing that Jackie Chan is involved, after seeing this movie, it reminded me of the part that he could play. So I'm actually looking more forward to it now, not because of the titles and everything, but the Karate Kid Legends movie coming out, I'm looking forward to because of rewatching this movie and having that refreshed in my head.
Okay,
so
cool.
Yeah, I think if they focused more on the characters like you were talking about and everything and have the story make sense, I agree with you.
Nice. Ashley, let's go to your Tragic Maker next.
It's actually the same as Patch. Just listening to y'all discuss and trying to find ways to like jump in. I'm like, you're like stealing the words right out of my mouth because honestly, by taking the name The Karate Kid for this film, it cheapened what it actually was. It cheapened it and it made it seem substantially less because it was never going to live up to the legacy of the 80s series. Because even if you're
all the flips, it surpassed it.
And that's well and great. The cinematics is fine, whatever. But by taking that name, just because you have this recognized entity, it was popular, you want to do something beat for beat, but change it ever so slightly. Even if they had called it the Kung Fu Kid, it could have been like an adaptation of the Karate Kid, just set in a different time, a different place. And I don't think that would have offended people very much because it's like a loving tribute, just like there are all these movies, like Patch was saying, like Fast and the Furious and Point Break, all of these different things that are like, hey, I really liked how that movie does it. I want to have my own take on it. So it can be in the style of the Karate Kid. And you can even take the beat for beats, adjust it for the time and the age of the character and the place that you're in. But seriously, call it for what it is. Call it the Kung Fu Kid. By calling it the Karate Kid, you're doing a disservice because everybody is going to be comparing it to a movie that already exists with that same title. Exactly. And it's frustrating because it obviously seems like, yeah, they did it as a cash grab. We can make money because we're going to call it this movie, even though it's set in another region of the world and it's Kung Fu. It's not karate at all. I'm sorry. It's going to dissuade people and it's just going to tarnish the legacy of the original. And it's like, how dare you take this name that is such this beloved franchise and just take it down into the gutter. And it also it hurts this movie.
Yeah.
It hurts it so it makes it seem like all you care about by calling it this is the money that you get from the association. And you're just hurting the movie because it could have been so much better and maybe people wouldn't have frowned upon it or completely written it off if it was called what it actually should have been called.
I am curious to go. So Ashley, Patch, and Paul, feel free to add in. There are times where keeping the same name works. I mean, you have, like, we just covered The Fugitive recently, and it was that's the same name, same story. Yeah. So I guess that's the whole point, is like, if you're going to name it the same, you better do it better. Otherwise, you're going to
tarnish its legacy. Yeah. Even look at the next Karate Kid. Yes, it was like a very similar name, but you still had Miyagi. It was his next protege. So it was just different enough. But this, you can't call it the same thing when the tenets are shifted enough. Yeah. It's just
for enough money you can.
I don't care that Will Smith bought the rights to the title The Karate Kid. I don't care how much money he paid to name the movie the way that he wanted to do it and have it be like a launching pad for his son. I don't care.
Yeah.
Name it something else.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think if you're going to use the same name, and if we use the Fugitive as an example, the challenge is, what is memorable about the previous entry, and how do we make it current to the time period that we're actually placing it in?
Absolutely.
Now, having not seen the original before seeing the 93 or 91 version of The Fugitive, all I have is that frame of reference. But as an example, the Magnificent Seven, Aaron and I covered the most recent edition of it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And he has so for perspective, Paul, I really enjoyed it, but I don't have a frame of reference because I didn't see the original.
Have you seen Three Amigos?
I have seen Three Amigos.
Then that's a better film.
Okay. In different worlds. The fact is, both of those come from what? Seven Samurai.
Right.
Yeah.
Of which
have you seen that?
Yes, I have. And when I woke up from my nap after watching the first
I was about to say it's better than that one. Yeah.
So there's that kind of adaptation and update, and then there's the shot for shot way that you're going to do things. And so anytime you name something the exact same thing as its predecessor, you're already going to be scrutinized, because you're like, what iconic scenes are they going to cut out? What iconic scenes are they going to change? What kind of dialogue is going to be different from the previous to the next? And so when it comes to Mag 7, the original Western, not Seven Samurai, that's why I think the new one was already behind the curve of being good quality.
Right.
Standalone, from a perspective, and this is what we loved about discussing it, because I came into it thinking about nothing but that movie, and I was like, oh, Chris Pratt's great in this, Denzel's great in this, and I love this part and this part. Whereas Aaron was saying, man, they just completely butchered this part. Well, and I have to go back to the episode, but the same thing. My friend Meredith and I covered the Last Airbender, the live action series that came out on Netflix. She's a huge fan of the cartoon, and so that same kind of experiment played itself out where I'd never seen the cartoon, so I have no perspective apart from what I'm seeing in these 7 or 8 episodes, where she has a different take, because she's like, yep, they switched this around and I don't love that they did this. And so it's a fun little like movie, TV show watching experiment, because you're like, does this live up to the billing of its predecessor, or does it work as a standalone? And spoiler alert, I didn't love the live action, even not having seen the cartoon. It doesn't really work for me as live action for a number of reasons. And you can listen to those episodes if you want. But the same thing here is, I wonder if I had no connection to the original Karate Kid, does this movie work as a standalone? I don't know that it does, because of what we've talked about with the age of the kids and the kind of oddball bullying that wouldn't necessarily take place in a 12-year-old's world, even though there is bullying that takes place. Just there are things that I don't connect with, and that's probably why it's not as good of a movie. Not because it's not as good as the Karate Kid, but that doesn't help the situation.
Yeah.
Going back to your Tragic Maker, it sounds like it's the same problem that generally people have if they read the book before watching the movie.
To an extent, but I've been that way before, but I think that Ready Player One is a fantastic example of a good book to movie adaptation, because Steven Spielberg said we can't do all this stuff, and so when you read the book,
not with that attitude, you can't.
yeah, it's true.
Step it up.
With the book has its own boundaries and limitations that can't be translated to a movie, and so I never expected a book like that to ever make it shot for shot into a movie, because some of that stuff just doesn't work. Now, The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, those have been more scrutinized because of the fact that you've got these large mythoses and legends and characters and stuff that you got to fit them in. And I think that those were good adaptations of their book counterparts, even though certain things were missing. The things that were missing weren't as significant to the overall plot and character development. If you had created a brand new character that made no sense in a movie because you were like, hey, we need to bring in this actor because he'd be great, I would probably have an issue with that. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a fantastic example of the movie deviating in a couple of ways, adding a couple of new characters, but they worked because they were quirky enough to fit into that universe. So I actually enjoyed that first movie. It didn't look a lot like the book, like it like I wanted it to, but it worked as an adaptation because the spirit of the book lived in the film adaptation. But I don't disagree, Paul. I think that's a great comparison of book to movie adaptations versus this stuff like this.
I'm curious, Ashley, because I think we're still in your. You said yours was the same as Patch's, but I just want to give you a chance to sort of cap this conversation before we move on to Mir Paul's Tragic Maker. Is there a movie that you feel like was a good remake from an original?
I would probably use The Hunger Games.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, that having read those books, like right before the first movie came out and then anxiously awaiting every movie when it got released. I mean, I felt like, yeah, it kind of declined as more movies were being made towards the end, but it was pretty beat for beat and it felt pretty authentic. And yeah, there were changes that were made, but I don't remember getting as horribly offended by it as I did when I saw Harry Potter, because those books were beloved. And when they would skip over things and change, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, but I get it. You can only have so many things in this sprawling universe and keep things concise and moving.
Haven't you said The Parent Trap is another one where you felt like the Lindsay Lohan one is better, or maybe I'm misremembering?
No, I have never said that the Lindsay Lohan one is better. I actually prefer the 1962 Haley.
Yeah, baby.
Because I was on that episode.
Maybe you should go re-listen to the Retro Rewind podcast.
You should go re-listen to that episode. It's somewhere in the 200s. But no, the original is better in so many different ways. And there's so many movies where I feel like the original, like 2005's Yours, Mine, and Ours, the one with Dennis Quaid and Rene Russo. I do not like it as much as the original 1969 one with Lucille Ball. And I want to say, is it Peter Fonda? Henry Fonda? It's one of the Fondas. And that one is just so much more believable and so much more enjoyable. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. They should have if they wanted to like pay tribute, but make it different enough, it should have just been called The Kung Fu Kid. You could have had that tangentially relation. It could even be set in the same dang universe. Obviously, that's what they're doing with Legends. Yeah. So you know what? They could have set up this like expanded universe. And I feel like it just missed its shot by being like, let's go with name recognition. And it just sullies the whole thing and leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Well, something that sullies the whole thing for me is very similar to both you, Ashley, and Patch's Tragic Maker, but it's not so much it's a very like specific aspect of it, and it's that the menace.
Menace?
No, okay. So the heart of the good guys in this version and the menace of the bad guys, were in the original were so much deeper than they were in this version. So I should have prefaced that. So if I look at Kreese, Johnny, Miyagi, Daniel, I feel like their hearts.
Daniel was a villain in his own story.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to go down that road right now.
But that's why I think he created the drama, where this one, he didn't.
Okay,
I think that's where the disconnect is. Okay, on that. But I'm guessing
there's still an aspect where I felt like the heart of the movie was so much deeper in the original than it was in here, and the gravitas of the bullies and stuff. In this film, everything looked much better. We were talking about the cinematography before, the choreography. I felt like those were all better, but it was just like this glossiness on I want to say like whitewashed tomb, but
that's flash, no substance.
Yeah. I felt like very
interesting,
very derivative, with just like a glossy coat. Like, oh, just look at how cool this looks. Don't worry about that. It's not really a great update or remake.
It's like a car. It's like all flashy because they put a clear coat on it, but it still has plastic bumpers.
Yes, exactly. So that's my Tragic Maker. It's just I wanted I think Han's backstory, I kind of like that he he gone to this wreck, and I don't know how cathartic it is that he rebuilds the car and then destroys it each year. That seems
each his own.
Yeah, but anyway, that's one thing that I did appreciate. But let's finish this off with Paul's Tragic Maker. What did you hate most about The Karate Kid 2010?
All right, for me, my Tragic Maker is, like I said, the ending. The final thing of
that
the
Mohawk
tournament.
kid didn't win. I get it. I'm right there with you,
Not only
Paul.
that, but you have Jaden Smith standing like the Cobra, which I think is a cool nod back to the Crane. It's a variation, not the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
That's cool. But then he does standing on one foot, he does this physics-defying flip. I forget if it's a front or a back, but from standing on one foot, he does a flip and is somehow able to kick his opponent, who's 10 feet away from him.
Exactly. It looks
Suspension of disbelief.
Well, yeah, but I think I even commented to you, Ashley, how he looks so far away. There's no way he hit him there.
Forget about suspension of disbelief. They just don't want you to actually look at it and what a critical lens and be like,
just don't watch this movie.
Yeah, just believe us. It can happen.
It's a magical ending that of all the things you want me to suspend my disbelief,
You're a wizard, Dre.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you,
for
Paul.
me. It's the worst thing of the movie for me.
Okay.
Takes you out.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've entered all our trajectories into the firing computer, I also have a firing solution for us.
Firing solution complete. Rating salvo armed and ready to fire on your mark.
Fortunately, they can't hear you when the clip goes.
Oh, me talking about Salvo Authority? Oh, darn. We should talk more about Salvo.
All right, guys. It's time for the moment of truth. Do we rate the Karate Kid 2010 version a classic? We'd recommend anyone go see it, whether or not they've seen it before. A nostalgic, if you remember liking it growing up, stop it, Bobo. If you remember liking it growing up, definitely give it a rewatch. You'll have fun with it. But if you've never seen it before, probably go see the original Karate Kid. Or do we rate it a tragic? It's not worth anyone's time today. If you have never seen it before, keep it that way. And if you have seen it before, don't sully any good memories you have of it with a rewatch. So, Ashley, we'll begin with you. You had predicted nostalgic. Where did it end up for you?
I wish it would have stayed nostalgic, but honestly, just going through it and really being introduced to the original and everything that's kind of launched from that point.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wanted to say nostalgic, but because they stole the name and it didn't live up to the name, it is a tragic. Sorry, sorry movie.
That's fair.
Jackie Chan can't even save you. And I love Jackie Chan. It's just so hard.
What would you say your favorite Jackie Chan movie is?
Honestly, I really have enjoyed the Rush Hour movies.
Yeah.
He is so good.
So good. Whoa. Yeah. Okay. Patch, you had likewise predicted nostalgic. Where did it end up for you?
Well, Kung Fu Dreams was nostalgic for me, but this black belt gives this movie a tragic rating. I will not watch this one again.
Okay. All right. Coming out swinging.
Abandon hope. All who listen here.
Exactly.
All right. So 2 tragics from our guests. Now, before we get to me and Paul's reign, you who support the podcast via Substack at firejoystudios.com, thank you so much. You get to vote on these movies as well. And even if you were to go and look at the voting now, it's wonky. It's going to look like a tie. But I accidentally voted, and one of the people that did vote didn't vote correctly. They later told me what they would have voted, but they couldn't change it. All that aside,
the numbers on your own end, and we're just supposed to magically believe you. Like I'm supposed to magically believe he could do a kick from one leg and hit someone 10 feet away from him.
According to our reflux capacitors, they rate The Karate Kid a nostalgic film. So we have 2 tragics and nostalgic. Paul, you had predicted nostalgic. Did it end up tragic for you?
Well, I actually wound up enjoying this movie more than I thought I would.
Oh, really?
So, like I said, and it made me look forward to the Karate Kid Legends coming out. And by the end of it, I was glad that I actually paid for it, even though I hadn't watched it now, because now I can watch it again, and I look forward to the next watching.
Oh, okay.
The question is, so it's not a tragic for me. The question is, would I rate it a classic?
Mm-mm.
And unfortunately, the answer is no. I don't recommend that everybody go out and see it. I mean, I think if you enjoyed it before, you would enjoy it again. But if you didn't, then you can stay away from this one.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm going to be on, depending on how you look at it, I'm going to be on team nostalgic. So that means it's tied right now.
Yeah, it is tied. All right, so I guess that really
one of us.
Go the other way. Go classic.
Don't do it, Francisco. Don't do it.
I mean,
come on, the 80s Karate Kid.
I mean, this is when Jaden Smith was at his best before
That's
After
true.
Earth.
After Earth came like a couple years later.
Yeah,
I wasted my time in the theaters with that movie too.
Yeah, and so he peaked out. He was great with Pursuit of Happiness. Peaked out here with.
He didn't quit while he was ahead, though.
Jackie Chan is really great.
Don't.
I don't know, guys. I feel like classic is not the thing to rate this.
Clearly.
But I'm sort of like in your line of thinking, Paul. Like, I think if you enjoyed this, you will still enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy. Okay, I like to vote for me.
Vote for you,
Francisco.
Don't go with reason.
Because I put down nostalgic here, but now I'm like reconsidering here.
What? You can't do that.
I haven't officially spoken my vote, even if it says something different on my paper.
No, I'm just trying to fight for my team. Like they are chanting for their team.
It's okay to lose. It's okay to lose. This movie lost a lot.
Okay, so would I recommend people not see this at all?
Look, Kung Fu's in everything, even a tragic role.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because there's better things to watch.
Hey, speaking of watch, don't trust your eyes.
You think only with your eyes, so you are easy to fool.
Anyone who thinks this movie is good.
I let people talk who like to talk. It lets me know how full of stuff they are.
Don't make that face, Francisco.
I'm going to change it here in the 11th hour to tragic. It's not worth seeing.
It's not.
So sorry, those that do enjoy it. I think I can understand why you would, but with better movies, also called Karate Kid out there, I'm going to rate this Karate Kid tragic film. And according to, oh my gosh, Bobo, according to the Retro Rewind podcast, we rated the Karate Kid 2010 a disputed tragic film. We'd recommend no one go see this, whether or not they've seen it before. But now it's time to get back to our own time. Good old 20XX.
20XX.
Calm sat online, awaiting incoming transmissions.
Feels good to be back. But we
Does it after that rating? No, go ahead.
But we wouldn't have been able to travel back to 2010 to begin with if it weren't for our amazing reflux capacitors, namely Deborah Powers, Geek Devotions, Drew of the Cellcast, Ashley Ruiz. Oh, you're right here. Kennethan, Fabulous Lomax, That's Our Bobo, D. Tungsten, Daryl Hafner, Cool Deluxe, Dustin He's a Big Deal Warford, Flux, Redeemed Otaku, in addition to 2 other awesome patrons as well. Thank you all so much for keeping the gigawatts coming. If you want to help keep us flying and get bonus content for your generosity, like our review of Cobra Kai Season 6 coming up here after this, head over to retrorewindpodcast.com/support or firejoystudios.com/subscribe to start.
Ah, yes. I see this dream utilizes an ancient secret of being sponsored by PaulJPowers.com.
So, Francisco, if people don't want to hear our review of Cobra Kai that's behind a paywall, but they still want to support the show, how would they go about doing that?
Well, there are a couple ways, but the primary way that we'd love for you to support us, if you can't support us financially, which I totally understand. So you probably enjoyed this episode if you made it this far. So if you aren't driving, tap the share icon in your podcast player for this episode and send it to a friend saying, hey, I know you like The Karate Kid. Watch these people dump on it. Or, hey, you didn't like The Karate Kid. These people agree with you. So I thought you might like this podcast on it.
Great. And I'll bet they'll thank you for it.
Maybe, hopefully.
And speaking of thanking people, we also want to give a big kung fu hug to Ashley Ruiz and Patrick Kicks for sharing their thoughts. And their black belt, if they have one, with with sharing their thoughts about the Karate Kid 2010 version. And since I like to go in alphabetical order, we'll start with ladies first. And Ashley, where can people find you online? And yeah, sorry.
Well, yeah, people can find me on the platform formerly known as Twitter. I don't like calling it X, because it sounds X-rated. Don't like that.
I've heard people call it Twix.
Twix?
Yeah.
Twix. No. We'll call it the platform formerly known as Twitter. Follow me there at Ashley Ruiz 1186. I tweet all things faith and fandom.
Awesome.
Cool. And Patrick /Patch, also known as Mr. Hicks. Sorry. Where can people find you on? Are you online anymore? And what's going on? What should people know? What's going on with you?
Yep, I'm on the platform formerly known as Twitter at Shoeless Patch, and I'm mainly just a spectator there. I don't tweet a lot. I retweet quite a bit if something strikes my fancy. But I actually I run a podcast called An Original Series. You can find Francisco on there. Seasons of Cobra Kai in their entirety, but you can check that out. An Original Series. You can find it on any place you get your podcast, Apple Podcast, I don't know, wherever they are, Spotify. I don't know what they're any place like that. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, just
cool.
any place you get your pods there. So that's where you can normally find me discussing TV shows. If you want to check out the now defunct Feel and Film, we are still around on Apple Podcasts because podcasts live on the internet indefinitely.
Podcasts never die.
And you can exactly, and you can hear all of our thoughts on 400 plus movies that we've covered over the course of like a 8-year period.
And that's called Defunct Feeling Film.
yeah, at Defunct Feeling Film. Oh, wow, just Feeling Film.
Feeling Film with no G.
Film.
With no G.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much, Ashley, Patch, my awesome most kick buttingness, whatever, Paul, jpowers.com, and all your reminders, new and old, for another fun voyage. We also want to thank Alutrick for enhancing our music. Find him at alutrick.bandcamp.com or youtube.com/@alutrick. That's spelled ALLOOUTRICK, then the number 8266 for the YouTube. So thank you so much to him.
And speaking of websites, I am pauljpowers.com. You can find me and all my social media links at pauljpowers.kungfukid.com. No, just .com.
And you can find me on our Discord for show announcements or just to say hi. Join us there at retrorewindpodcast.com/Discord, which will kick you over to Firejoy Studios for the link to our Discord.
This podcast is a proud member of Culture Box, a curated collection of podcasts, videos, and articles that will provide you a balanced meal of content. You will find culture celebrated for its past and future, satirized for its extremes, explored in study, and created anew in story. Point your web browser to culturebox.media.
And as grown-up Jaden Smith just said, we are now part of Culture Box Media Network. Find all the shows unpacking truth through story, comedy, and geekery at culturebox.media.
Thank you, EXO, and thank you for listening. We pray you are more joyful today than when you first hit play. But like a Pokemon, we gotta catch you all for Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, our next adventure on the Retro Rewind podcast.
Retro Rewind mission complete. Proceed to base to await next mission.
Sorry, Jackie Chan, but I think your friend Xiao Dre didn't really get us to that classic or even nostalgic level.
You have taught me a very important lesson, Xiao Dui. Life will knock us down, but we can choose, matter or not, to get back up.
You're staying down.
Yeah. So good luck in your Karate Kid Legends movie, Jackie.
I don't see. And when did he teach him that? I never got that. When was that even taught to him?
It's
like, when
implied.
did Dre teach him that?
Because he kept getting up. He kept, no matter what Jackie threw at him. Like, you know how many days he was putting up his jacket or not? I wouldn't have lasted 2 hours.
Yeah,
He
but
lasted like a
I
week.
thought that's how Jackie Chan was trained by his father. So wouldn't he have been taught that, if anyone, from his father?
No, he was making it up. He saw that was an issue and he wanted to.
He saw that in this movie called The Karate Kid. Like, oh, I'll use that in training
No,
a
he
boy
saw the
someday.
jacket on the floor. He's like, yeah,
I'm going to help his mom.
Yeah.